I am considering grad school, so I do not have a job currently.
Hello, I'm Austin Griffin, class of 2015. I'm graduating here in a couple days. I'm still looking for a job. I'm not accepting any offers.
My name is Mateo Aviles, and I'm also graduating this semester in a week. And I'm still looking as well.
I go by Johnny Yoon. I graduated in May 2017, and I am still looking for a position.
My name is Joshua Kirby, and I'm also graduating in May, and I'm still looking for a job.
Together we are Team Luminote. We got a little video for you. The subtitles are probably going to be wrong.
I see this part needs this vibe, show off this vibe, and this part needs to show like part. Yeah. No, that's two down. Two needles. A little bit too out.
Emily had to pay $500 for that recording session. But with Luminote, Emily doesn't need to hire a professional musician and can use the computer to help her write her new hit single. One program, one group, one goal. To immerse users in a new way to compose music. Luminote.
Alright, well, hope you enjoyed that. As you saw from the video, my sister Emily had a difficult time communicating her thoughts to the producer, me. But Luminote was able to bridge that gap between her and the final product she wants. She doesn't necessarily need my help anymore. And the way that it does that is it provides musical suggestions as you're using the program dynamically through lighting up the piano. So all different types of musicians are able to use this product. You don't have to play the piano as well as you think you do. We've had singers who really enjoy using this product. It's definitely something that you use alongside your composition. It doesn't necessarily write the music for you, it just provides the suggestions, right?
So there are already many applications that help people just kind of learn to play songs and music. But our application is different because in addition to this, we also help people learn how to compose their own unique pieces. So for our design, we're trying to focus on what musicians struggle with most when creating music. And that's kind of writer's block or not really knowing what notes are right next. And so to combat this, we provide suggestions that the user can use to know what notes work well next and where to go.
When we first started developing the application, we realized that there was a learning curve. When users are confronted with this, they're not really sure what to do. So what they do is they play a note, and they see, okay, it gives me some feedback. It shows me what note I'm playing. It's texted as a chord. So then they try and play the C chord. Still nothing. It just shows you what you're playing. And so they finally decide to play a chord suggestion, or a chord and a melody note at the same time. Then it starts to actually make suggestions near their point. To combat this learning curve, we included dynamic instructions, which alerts the user what exactly is going on. And in addition, we created a tutorial which guides the user from the start to the finish of the application so that they can reach the full potential.
As I said earlier, Luminote doesn't actually have the final say in the composition. This makes it different from other projects that are currently out there right now because all these computer scientists have this notion that, oh, I gotta make this program that writes music for you, right? That's the whole cool thing now. Well, that is really impressive and quite a feat. We don't believe that it's very viable in a real world sense. So this product the goal is to really put all the things in front of you, so it's more of a recognition system over recall, because it's much easier to see, oh, well, yeah, I can totally do that, instead of remembering that you can't have that option. So, with this, we actually avoid quite a few ethical concerns that self-writing computer programs would have. In our program, there is no discrepancy or gray area because the human definitely owns the rights to the music. I would say, if anything, the only ethical concern might be that we are keeping track of the notes they've been playing to provide good suggestions. So we want to make sure that we discard that information appropriately and not steal their compositions.
This is the materials that we need to have to use the full features of our application. The application will work by itself, actually without the piano or without the LEDs. You can click on the keys. Another thing is you could have the piano and you could have the LEDs and it'll still work. Those are just the extra features we added for it.
Our team members come from different backgrounds in computer science. However, we all have the knowledge of web stack technology to code in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, jQuery. Also, we do play some instrument and have some knowledge of music theory to know the music rules. Also, Mateo has some electrical engineering background to generate the LED lights on the piano. So this shows how we manage the project. However, although we have some overlaps in coding works, Jimmy was in charge of music logic in the backend, and Josh was in charge of importing sounds and researching and documentation. Mateo was in charge of the hardware part, and Austin and I were in charge of the visualization and user interface.
Our mentor is actually a music professor here at Texas A&M. He specializes in the trombone, but he can definitely play a lot more instruments than that. I would say he falls under the realm of non-pianist that uses the piano more of a tool than an instrument. And all right, so right now, a lot of the suggestions are basically hard-coded in with regards to a lot of music theory knowledge. Now, I still had to create quite an API to implement this, generalizing note representation. There's a total of 12 keys on the piano. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But when you're using a song, you usually only tend to use 7 of those. And so I have 2 different ways of representing those notes. But of course, sometimes you end up using the notes that are not in those 7. So you have to be able to go back and forth between these 2 representations of notes. And along with that, I have a total different sets of stacks and different variables and data structures that are manipulated depending on the input that you're giving with a pedal or with pressing a note in the left hand versus the right hand. A lot of different things are going on to make sure that, for instance, when I'm playing this, that it's still highlighting the same chord there.
So the UI part is divided into 2 parts. So the user enters the user data with the MIDI keyboard or the virtual piano on the screen. And the menu options utilize that user input and transforms the data so that the interface can give effective suggestions. The menu options is as simple as a menu on a modern day website. The user can just click on the value of the menu to change the value. For example, the user can set the key signature into E5, or user can choose a color theme using the menu options.
Johnny just touched on the themes. So in order to visualize the data, we had to assign colors to different chord suggestions. We kind of broke this up into 2 different parts. We had chord suggestions and melody suggestions. Chord suggestions are always separate color from melody suggestions and never change. But on the contrary, melody suggestions have different levels. For example, we have level 1 for chord tones, level 2 for whole step passing tones, and it keeps going down from there. But each level has a different color assigned to it. So we saw that in our user studies that users had different preferences on the colors. So we created a variety of themes to meet their preference. For example, we have a expert theme, which has real hard values, hard differences between the suggestions, as opposed to the rainforest theme, which has a soft gradient between the different levels. Based on user preference, they can select what best meets their needs. Next, we had to create the virtual keyboard. In order to do this, we first created a single scale, a single octave with HTML and CSS. Next, we used JavaScript to generate multiple octaves. And in the same time, we added an ID to each key. We then created an API in order to highlight, unhighlight, and scroll the piano. It uses the key ID to target a specific note on the keyboard to highlight it a specific color or to unhighlight it. In addition, we have the scroll keyboard, so in case the user moves down the piano, it scrolls with them to ensure that the note they're playing is within the window. Next, we had the viable keys feature. This is a good feature for beginner users. It shows them what keys are viable within the scale that they have selected. In addition, it shows them what keys to avoid. It's a nice starting point for anyone who wants to get started. Next, we have the chord suggestions. The chord suggestions, we show the top 6 chords for the selected scale. If you hover over one of the options, it will show you how to play that chord. In addition, if a user selects a melody note on the keyboard, it will suggest chords for them. These are single note chords, I'd like to note. So right now it's suggesting from left to right, E flat, A flat, and C minor. If they play one of the single note suggestions, it will show them how to play a variation of that chord. So that's the chord suggestions. Next we move to the melody suggestions. In order to get melody suggestions, you must first be playing a chord. Once it detects a chord, it's detected that he's playing an E flat, then they can play notes on the right side with the split point in order to generate melody suggestions near that note. And finally, we created a singing feature, which when it is toggled on, a user can sing into the microphone. Ah! It'll detect the key that the pitch that they're singing. It highlights on the keyboard the note and also suggests chords for that note.
So this is the tech stack. From bottom up, we have the keyboard, we have the LEDs mounted on the keyboard. The piano will send MIDI messages to the application. The application consists of Express, Node.js server. We also use socket.io for events occurring on the client side. And this is also like for future purposes. We do talk about a teaching component later on. We have serial port. This is a node module, which allows us to communicate to the any serial port interface. We're communicating with Arduino, so this is what we're using to communicate with it. And then we use the Web MIDI API. Obviously, this is going to be used to communicate with the piano or the keyboard, the MIDI keyboard. And then we have our music theory logic. It processes all that MIDI data. And then we have jQuery, HTML, CSS for the front end. For the hardware side, we have the Arduino and the LEDs. We interface with this hardware with these libraries. I've mentioned the Web MIDI API. It's very new. It's not really used in many projects as of yet because it's so new. It's a very powerful and very cool library. And then we have also the serial port library that's used to communicate with Arduino. And we also use the LED to change the lights on the LEDs. We do use Adafruit's NeoPixel library. There's also the Fast LED library, which I'm considering using after this project. It's much faster.
for user studies, we studied 30 people with focus on beginner to intermediate pianists. And so we first start off with having them try to compose a piece using just a regular piano, not our application. And unless they were well versed in music theory, this usually didn't go very well. So following that, we would have them use our application and try to compose something unique. And the majority of users found our application extremely helpful and could compose a unique piece on their own. But we did have some results that we realized we needed to work on. So the first off being colors, which we touched on earlier. Different people see colors different ways, and so we created the thing that Austin talked about earlier, where they can select different things for whichever one suits them. Next, we realized that a lot of our features aren't very intuitive. So even after we explained to them what they were, they would still be kind of confused. So we had a helper text to help them realize what was going on. Finally, users didn't really know where to start when opening up Luminote. So we added a tutorial so that they can get moving along.
Taking this simple concept of lighting up a note to display different information based on its color can be then transformed into whatever your mind has interest in. So with me, I came up with an idea of having an online community where people could upload their favorite chord voicings, and then other people can see those voicing and play them in whatever key they want to play them in. The reason this is so helpful is because jazz musicians will often play extremely complex chords like this, and they don't really know how to play that in a different key. So with this program, you would be able to change the key, and it would show you how to play it in a different way. That's one way, but I think the most interesting way is probably with machine learning, because as you can see, there's a lot of different suggestions that it gives you. It's almost overwhelming. You don't really know which one to pick. It's like, well, of course I can just go all over the place, right? But if we implemented some really interesting learning into the program, it would be able to narrow those suggestions down immensely. So.
Oh, to conclude, we have this issue or this problem that oftentimes beginners and seniors have, where either they don't really know where to go with their composition, they have the idea in their head, and either they need other people to compose it for them, but using our program, we put that power to them to compose their music. It doesn't compose it for you, and so I think that's very rewarding on the part of the user. They've composed their own music, so we're very happy with our product, and there's a lot of stuff that we can continue doing, and I think we plan on doing much more with it.
Obviously, we'd like to thank Dr. Hammond, our TA Renero, Liam, who's actually in the audience, who helped us with the hardware, and our mentor, and just the encouragement that we got from our users. We only had 30, but they were constantly checking up on us, making sure, what do you have now? Especially that line that's coming from space. I call it the beam from space. Before that was there, it's very difficult to see what note you're currently playing, right? Because they're highlighted so many different colors. So once we got that, that was quite rewarding for them.
Can you tell us a little bit about the software engineering techniques you used? Great project, by the way. But how did you collaborate? How did you fit the pieces together?
We had a Gantt chart that we're using in agile style programming. So we have a consistent checkpoint to check if we have accomplished this goal. And yeah, we were constantly checking.
It was very quick from the beginning. We really I think it was the first 2 weeks we had something out. We had, working prototypes. It wasn't like fully functional. We ended up trying to flesh things out as we went. We met every weekend. We tried to meet every weekend, and we were in class from 1 to 4 for the most part, the most times.
Did you guys feel you have enough time to do this project in this time frame?
It's definitely usable right now. There's room for improvement for sure. especially with machine learning, I believe. That's why I tried to avoid that for this semester. The reason I'm actually considering grad school, one of the reasons, is because it's such an interesting project to me that I would then be able to devote my time to that learning machine learning.
And one of the things was that we were very focused on what we wanted, and we wanted to make it good. And this is what we came up with. And I think this is essentially what we came up with in the beginning. We didn't want to just throw a lot of features and then kind of work on them all separately, because we wanted to have something, that nugget that is what we wanted. So,
And as a front-end developer, I wanted to have a design pattern like MVC model, but this application doesn't really browse into any other templates, so we didn't really require to use the MVC model to develop this application. That was my.
So your target audience, at least what I understood, is basically are at different levels of expertise with piano, right? So basic learners to advanced learners as well. So did you think of providing any personalization or customization, like what features I want to keep enabled versus disabled? Because there is a lot of
Right, there's a
overwhelming
lot of
on-
stuff in front of you, for sure. The themes is pretty much the only way right now that we have to combat that, to make it say, okay, if you're a beginner, actually I don't think we ever showed this, but with the beginner, there's literally no difference in the colors that is suggested in the right hand. But you see the white and black notes are obviously ones that you don't want to pick. But other than that, it's very simple. But yes, I totally understand. Because with the sing option and the scale and the key, it's almost overwhelming still, even with the tutorial. So.
Does everybody on the team play instruments? Does everybody does?
I
think we all play piano to a degree, and then the rest of us, he can play bass really well.
I play guitar.
Yeah, the guitars and stuff.
So when you're talking to somebody who can play a radio, like my colleague here, it's overwhelming for sure. The suggestions is that how have you implemented that? What's your thinking around the suggestions that are coming out there? That means something to you when the things light up. It doesn't mean a lot.
For sure.
But the suggestions are there to try to help you with that. I get that. But what are those suggestions? Do those change with what's being played? Is it sensing that, or is it, hey, I've detected this pattern, and so here's the 3 that I'm going to light up every time? How are you guys? How did you implement it?
Well, right now it's hundreds of cases almost that is saying if you are playing this left hand and then the first note in the scale of 7. Remember how I was talking about 7 versus 12? So the first note in those 7, it's going to highlight the one lower, 2 higher, 3 higher, 4 higher, 7 higher, just like that. And so that's where I really want to work on it in the future, is with making the machine. Well, right now it does kind of take into account a couple of notes back. So like if I do that, it'll kind of narrow them down a bit, but not really. It's definitely hard-coded for now.
So what happens if you play like totally off key or like a bad note or anything like that? Does it try to
So
correct
it gives you a red.
Okay.
So for those of us that can play Guitar Hero, then we could maybe get by this one. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. You could use this and play your guitar into it.
I mean, I would find it really useful for chord suggestions because, I'm not really that familiar with chords. So given you select your scale, then you're given the top 6 chords within that scale. You could hover over them and see how to play them and then transition that to the guitar. So this is kind of like a learning tool, so you can really use it, with your other instruments as a tool.
And another thing is that, whenever you're playing, there are these rules that you can follow to find out what notes are good, but you have to really think about them. And if you're really good, like Jimmy is, he already knows where to go. I think this kind of it uses those rules. It uses that music theory, and you don't have to do that in your head. It's So for me, that's useful as well. So whenever you change your key signature, I'm not familiar with all key signatures. I'm not familiar with all like the scales and the scale in that key signature. So it's just a lot to know, and this kind of narrows it down. It helps you even learn it. So by seeing it.
Right, and on the topic of learning, we're not really trying to teach you how to compose music. It's definitely you have to have some sense of composition skill, which is already a subset of musicians, right? Because a lot of musicians just want to play songs that already are written. So maybe this will help bridge the gap between those people who are like, well, I want to write any kind of music. Maybe if they have this, that kind of stuff puts it right in front of them, recognition of a recall, maybe they'll be more interested in composing their own melodies.